Welcome into another Fireside Chat here at the Future of Freight Festival. I'm Kaylee Nix, one of your hosts at F3. Joining me today is founder and president of Surge Transportation. We've got Omar Singh with us. Omar, no stranger to the FreightWave stage. Thank you for joining us here at F3 for this Fireside Chat.
Great to be here. It's been a great 3 days, so super excited to have been here. Sorry that it's over, but it was a good time.
These 3 days went probably faster than any 3 days that I've been at a conference before. I don't know if it was like the stage lights or being back and forth between FreightWaves TV, networking with all the folks in the exhibit hall, but like these 3 days just flew by.
I think it was speed networking like I've never seen it before. You know, it was really cool to have all of the vendors and all of our customers and just our collaborators and competitors in the same place at the same time. And the energy was incredible. It was good.
That's the entire draw of a FreightWaves event like this, right? Like we do it special. We've got the whole exhibit hall, not like a true like exhibit hall, right? It's like a hallway. So you get to almost listen to your competitors and you get to hear some of their secrets, but it's also a marketing strategy, a customer strategy. You guys had an ideal location for your booth also, right there on the corner. So like everybody's walking by y'all, they're seeing you all the time.
You couldn't miss us. Yeah, right by registration.
Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't suck.
That's a perfect spot
But
to
I
be.
have to say, I liked how it was all one row. Because you go to a lot of events and you got all of the rows, right? You got the 100 aisle, the 200 aisle, 300 aisle. And like, you don't always get to all of them. And here you had no choice because everyone was in the same place.
You had to see every single person, regardless of if you actually wanted to or not.
There's no hiding.
No hiding. So we're going to talk a little bit about Surge, but I want to talk about this suit because, like, you are matching head to toe, glasses, socks, pin, pocket square, belt loops, shoes. Even the color on your buttons goes with the suit. Tell me a little bit about this.
So that has a lot to do with Tadina, my wife. So
okay.
She's also our marketing manager, so there's no getting away. So she's picking it, I'm wearing it, but yeah, we try to be on brand. I was repping Surge with the pins and Surge Red. You should see our house. There's lots of Surge Red. So see our offices, there's a lot of it.
I love it. So, me, myself and Sydney Edwards, you've seen us, we've been in the FreightWaves Blue every single day the last week. And people are like, how do you find that exact shade of blue? Just like kind of ubiquitous with, I think, like the colors that show up good for TV, right? And show up good in like formal clothing or business casual, business formal clothing. It's the same thing with that red. So I love it, on brand. I totally appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about Surge. Of course, you are the founder, you are the president. You run it with your wife. She's an integral part of the business.
Absolutely.
The Surge story is one that it's great. I love it. It's inspiring. And it has served you guys well so far in the freight tech industry, I think.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work. A lot of times I say I'm not sure I could do it again when I think about everything that we had to do in 2020 and 2021 and hire 200 people during a pandemic and open offices and travel nationally and internationally. And I look back on those just very recent years and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I could do that again. But I mean, she has been just a great push to do everything, go to market, branding, hiring. She's just part of everything. And it's been a fun ride too. It's been a fun ride. So
being in digital brokerage and in that space is, I think, less unique than it was 2 years ago at the start of the pandemic, right? There's kind of been this uptake of folks who are getting into the digitization space, who are building a digital brokerage offering. But Surge has done it really well from the get-go. What is kind of that secret sauce that has allowed you guys to build well from the start?
I think it's been sort of, I think of us as like kind of the wave 2, right? So everyone knows sort of the big traditional, original digital brokerages. And then I think we're wave 2 who's come in and in many ways had customers tell us what their specs are and what they need and give us the roadmap to how to build APIs and real-time pricing. But yeah, a lot of brokerages are learning it. They're developing their own technology. Now some other products are on the market that are helping brokers go digital. There's third-party integration platforms. So I've been saying I think it's going to be the way people do business in the future. And it's taken a little longer than I thought it would, but it's really picking up.
So with that, there is so much talk of the buzzword of integrations now. Like, I think that I probably could count at least 10,000 times in the last 3 days where I've heard that word integrations, right? 2 years ago, it felt like we were talking visibility. That was like the big word. A year ago, it was like capacity solutions. That was what everybody's talking about. And now we're talking about integration. And I think a lot of that integration chitter chatter has to do with the fact that we know we're entering a market where things might not be so rosy for everybody. So your partnerships that maybe you've been fighting these last 2 years are going to be absolutely key. those are going to be keys to survival through integration. How do you think that partnerships come out and play a role now in the next maybe half a year, so 2 quarters, the first 2 quarters of 2023, when it comes to sinking or swimming in an albeit slower market?
I mean, I think for us, it's our path to success, or our way of survival to get through, everything that's happening right now. But so, and it's always important to remember both sides, right? Especially not just as brokers, but I mean, as players in this market, there's TMS integrations with shippers, right? Like shipper TMSs, your Blue Yonders and your E2 Opens and Mercury Gates, Oracle, and Transporion. And then there are partner integrations, which is what we were here doing all week, right? These are like, sometimes it's surprising to me how many vendor partners we have, right? And you just kind of walk this aisle and just can't stop long enough to talk to everybody who you work with. So there's like the big integrations that help bring business in, which are the shipper integrations and the pricing integrations. And then there are the partner alliances that we have in our ecosystem and network that then allow us to move the freight once we get it. So we have we're integrated with TMSs to get the freight, and then in order to move it, either if it's booking automation with load boards or our own load boards, and then visibility, and then compliance and safety and onboarding and pricing, and just so many different things that enable us to move. Not just our own internal TMS, which isn't a shipper TMS, it's broker to motor carrier TMS. So, and then they have different modules and different partners. And so it's amazing.
So when you look at integration processes and you're talking about now finding these partnerships and these almost like an alliance, right? You're building freight alliances. How do you balance both integrity and integration, but still keeping identity of your individual company, whether that's what you do, how you do it, the branding that you do it with? How do you balance making integrations work really well with your partnership, seamless partnership, but identity of who your brand is, who your company is?
I think that's a great question. I mean, because a lot of times, a lot of people at a high level can say all brokerages do the same thing. And it's not true, right?
Not at all.
Yeah. But you're right. You have to kind of represent your core identity and who you are. And a lot of people will use the same integration partners, but I think for us, it's more about business model, which our business model goes back to 2010 when I first went out of business. But, it was always been a strategic business continuity, overflow, backup, difficult freight to move, kind of get your hands dirty and do things that no one else wants to. And so that is, I think, still at the core of our partnership with customers. And then with motor carriers, it's very similar. You always have to be very clear about kind of the relationship strength that you have with them, the partnerships, and just, it's not going to be about a tool. Like we're now rolling out automation for automated booking, but now the kind of strategy is how do we roll that out while allowing all of the reps to still have their partnerships? Because you don't want the communication and the day-to-day phone calls and relationships and time spent together to go away. Even though there's a way to book automatically, we still want to keep the value of the partnership strong. So
you mentioned first going out of business, and I think that that's an important part to touch on in your story as a founder, and an important part when we talk about the broader ecosystem of where freight and founder is right now, right? I think there's a lot of folks who have maybe entered this space in the last 2 years that say, holy crap, we are afraid to fail. Like they're looking at a downturn market and they're going, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Are we selling? Are we closing our doors? Are we shuttering our trucks if you're an owner operator? Are you shutting down your brokerage operations? Like they are so afraid to fail that it might end up failing them inevitably in the end anyways, right? When you talk a little bit about that founder aspect of accepting a failure and accepting like, man, this first idea didn't necessarily work out. I went out of business. Let me pull myself up by the bootstraps and do it again. How is that so integral to the way that now Surge does business today?
Well, I mean, it's everything. If you maybe ever hear people who've worked with me, I can have like an intense streak, right? Because like everything, every load,
focused.
Yeah. Well, every load, every like decision is like, oh, I could go out of business and lose everything again, and that sucks. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like it's terrible to lose everything, and so there is an intensity behind the execution of either partnerships or carrier relationships, customer relationships, but also just in the hiring decisions and in the in the margin decisions of, how do we make sure carriers still are getting enough, but we're getting enough also, and getting them the right kind of freight that's helpful to them while servicing customers. And then it's all with this backdrop of, it could just fall apart and be gone. And so there's this like almost like a trauma, like a constant state of like, oh, this could all be over. It's going so well, it could just be over too. So it's scary sometimes.
Does it make you more cautious or more likely to accept calculated risk as a founder, knowing that you did something, you failed at it at first, you've come back from it, and now you're seeing success?
I think it makes actually me more aggressive, like calculated risk, but also it's, in order to stay relevant, like I have to be just trying to be at the forefront of everything that we're doing, because if we just get swallowed up in a sea of kind of normalcy, where then it really becomes hard to compete and differentiate yourself and have identity and like bring value to partnerships and relationships. So I think that it's, just everything is just a lot more intense, and a higher risk tolerance, believe it or not a lower risk tolerance, a higher risk tolerance, because it's like if I don't take these chances and don't take these shots, then I might not get them again.
I like live life by a mantra that's like do it scared, right? Like there's
like
there's a lot of stuff in my young life that maybe like I haven't done quite yet or haven't had the chance to take on. But like there's stuff that scares you out there. Like being a business person is scary. Having an entrepreneurial idea is scary. And I sit there and I'm like, you know what? You're gonna either do it or not. But like if you're scared, do it scared, right? Same thing applies to a founding mentality. You don't know if you're going to succeed in business. You don't know if you're gonna make it in freight. You don't know if you're gonna land a single customer, and you can be scared about it, but you should do it anyways.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of feel like a lot of times I think about my days, or some days, not maybe every day anymore, but it's, I grew up boxing competitively, and it's like, do it scared, because you get up in the ring and it's like terrifying, but you get in there. This is what we practice for, and let's just do it. And hopefully it works out.
What's scarier, stepping in the boxing ring or trying to book a load with someone who wants nothing to do with you?
Oh, I'm going to go book a load. That's what we do these days. So
there you go. All right, let's move a little bit on to Surge itself and what you guys are doing actually in the transportation technology innovation space right now. We talked a lot about automation, some API stuff, some back-end processes. Where are you guys sitting when it comes to that actual digital brokerage aspect right now?
So I'm excited because, the last couple of years we really spent on the customer load procurement automation part, which was developing real-time pricing algorithm and shipper TMS integrations. But that's half of it. Half of what we do is getting loads from customers, and then the other half is giving them to motor carriers. So now we've automated the load booking space to kind of go full circle, on both sides of automation. And that's, I think, the most exciting, because as an organization, it's really kind of doing that digital leap or transformation, as everybody says. And then I think it also is something our carrier partners have been looking for a while. And so now it's kind of revamping compensation and workflow, and excited to kind of see how that changes how the company operates. But it's exciting.
Let's talk a little bit about the difference between the Surge load board and public load boards that are out there. There's a lot of reliance still on some public load boards, and there's also, I think, a lot of hesitancy to see maybe a private load board through a personal TMS as a worthy investment or a timely investment too. It can be hard, especially for a smaller to mid-sized brokerage, to say, you know what, I'm going to get into this and I'm going to invest my money in it. Where do you think that value prop sits for something that is like a Surge type of load board versus like a public private?
I mean, I think that it sits with the carriers, right? If the carriers, all of our repeat relationships, and all of the people who say, I want to work with Surge repeat. And if you go to a public load board, you kind of have to work to find the freight, right? And so those boards are more about, the origin destination pair than they are about who you work with. So giving them a space to say, if you want to really partner with us, and then we can incentivize you in different ways, from using our board versus other boards, whether it's financial or if it's, faster pay terms, or, just different things you can do to make the relationship stronger. So it's a vehicle or a tool for strengthening the partnerships with motor carriers. And I think that, they find it valuable to say, okay, I'm not going to lose you in a sea of everybody else's freight. I'm going to just be able to focus on developing this partnership and kind of building our lanes together. And so it helps for that relationship part of it.
When it comes to what the future of freight looks like, the future of deciding who moves what and where it moves and how much it costs, how much do you think is going to change maybe in the next year, the next 5 years, and the next 10 years based on those carrier relationships? How much is going to remain, you know what, I'm going to take this load just because it's priced right versus, hey, we have this substantial relationship. I might be a little bit out of my way. You might not be paying me enough, but I like you. We work well together. I like the integrations you have. I like the technology you use. So I'm going to rely on you, even though on paper you might not be the best, the quality over quantity.
I mean, I hope we do a good job of creating value in our partnerships with carriers, and in the same way that we do with customers. You know, if customers will give weightage to performance, so a lot of times they won't always go with the cheapest rate. They'll go with the better provider based on metrics or relationship. They know that they're gonna, you know, we're gonna get it done. So we get a lot of business where they say, "I trust you to do this," and I hope that we do a good job of getting motor carriers to also find value in the relationship, where they're not always saying it's just about price, but it's about value in the relationship, and how can we do something that is just more about value than about price. And it's not always easy because, I mean, it's such a low margin business that every dollar really matters, you know, but that's the goal, and I hope we're good at it. I mean, I certainly try to be.
I think the successes you guys have seen kind of speak for themselves within the last recent years. As far as going into a more muted market, and I think that there is no doubt that we are heading into a freight recessionary time, but there's also definitely this twinge of, you know, COVID was a complete anomaly in the freight space, something that nobody could have predicted, nobody could have expected. The things that came out of it were just absolutely wild, and now we're seeing kind of the opposite end of the incredible increase that was the COVID-19 pandemic. As we move into this, what is going to be that number one thing that drives success or failure through a changing market for you guys?
I mean, for us, it's challenging because, you know, in a tight capacity market, you know, customers can sort of pass the cost of increased freight on to consumers by raising their cost per case. So as transportation prices go up and motor carriers make more money as a result, our customers don't really suffer from a forecasted budget. They might, but they can still change the cost of their goods, which we see with inflation, right? But then in a market that we're going into now, it's really challenging because, and then we try to always help carrier partners understand that, you know, we have to price it a certain way to get it. Otherwise, you know, we're not gonna get it if we price it too high for customers. But it's also so tight for them with fuel costs and operating costs and equipment costs to survive, you know. So it's super tight margins for them, but it is as well for us to, in order to procure the freight, get it for them to keep them busy, and then, you know, make enough to survive in the meantime is just kind of all we're looking to do, right? And a lot of times carriers think that we're crushing it or we're making this big rip, as people say, and it doesn't happen.
You're out here trying to make like 80% margin on this one load, and you're, you know, you sit there with your buddies and you high five and you close the deal, and it's like, yeah, you know, like the money rains down. But that's not actually the case, right? Like there is so much more in transportation and freight where people are so relationship driven. I think that that's also a very unique aspect of our piece of the sales industry. A lot of these pieces, you know, because like at the end of the day, like we're sales, right? We're selling freight, we're matching things up, we're selling loads, we're selling transportation. But there's folks who have been in the industry and who have been on the carrier side, who have been on the ops side, the load planning side. Sometimes brokers have been drivers before. Sometimes brokers want to be drivers. So there's this crossover in experience and this need to take care of one of another that I think really helps bleed into connecting your shipper, your broker, your carrier, and everyone in between.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've sat in all of those seats, right? So, I mean, I was a driver, I was an owner-operator, I was a small fleet owner, and then, you know, I was a broker for national firms, and then broker for, you know, for Surge ourselves. And it's exciting. Like generally, you'll kind of get the sort of supply chain degree track. People end up working on the shipper side, but I'm starting to see a lot more come onto the service side for brokers and motor carriers, and that's neat because traditionally they would go to the shipper world, and now they're coming to the service world, which is it's exciting to see. And it is. Like, my son's a truck driver. I hope that eventually, I mean, if that's what he wants to do forever, that's great. But I think that it can also open a lot of doors, having that ground up experience, getting into a career track, like, when he's ready, if he does, you know.
This is, I think, a good place for us to kind of wrap up on is the future of employment in the industry for you when you see that. Obviously, there is a ton of gaps in the workforce right now. We're seeing a driver shortage. We're having just a general labor shortage. The warehousing industry needs workers. There's billions, not truly billions, there's millions and millions of open jobs right now that could help come service the transportation industry in all aspects. And I think we're seeing more and more often now that people don't necessarily care about your education, your background, your experience. They want to know, do you work hard? Do you believe in our core values? And are you going to show up when it matters at this company? Do you think that that's what the future of our workforce looks like, is a reliance on who you are, how you work, and what you can do to support your team, and less on what the letters are behind your name on your degree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just everybody's kind of personal brand and what do you bring to the table, right? Education's one thing, but I mean, yeah, this is still, I think, a grinder industry, right? Where it's about being present. Obviously, you have to perform. You can't just be present and not do anything. But, you know, and then like execution, getting things across the line, being kind of, everyone on the team has to almost be a go-to person in this business. You can't, like, nobody's just sitting on the bench and kind of hanging out. So everybody, you know, matters. Every team member matters. And of course, from a cost standpoint, you know, we can't afford it either. Margins are tight. People think that they're not, but they are.
Absolutely
In this business. Yeah.
So 2023 for search transportation, if you had to define your goals in 3 words for the year, what do you think that those are going to be?
Oh,
you said hard questions.
Yeah.
So this is a good one.
Do it well.
Do it well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I like
not
that.
Do it scared. Do it well.
Maybe do it scared.
Yeah.
Do it scared into
Yeah.
doing it well.
Yeah.
You can channel both ways.
Right.
Awesome, Omar. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for this Fireside Chat. I think this was a great way to wrap up the Future of Freight Conference. What did you learn here these last 3 days that you think will take with you into the end of the year and the start of next year?
You know, I think that what I kind of briefly mentioned it earlier, but I really learned to appreciate how many partners we have in this, right? There's no one's going it alone. No company is, no matter what. And of course, customers are partners, but this was an event about our sort of execution side of the business partnerships. And it's just amazing to see so many people, not just people, but realize like, wow, we have a lot of people who we work with in order to get this done. So that's been, I think, my biggest takeaway is appreciating all of those people.
Well, we were grateful to have you with us, grateful to have all of our attendees with us as well. As I mentioned before, these partnerships really just don't happen without those partnerships that you mentioned. Both us here at FreightWaves, all of our sponsor support, you guys at Surge Transportation. If people want to get in contact with y'all, where can they go to do that?
I think everything's on our webpage, and very generally there's info at Surge Transportation. There's real time for pricing, but if you just go to the page, there's career page, there's motor carriers. I mean, it can just be directed there. SurgeTransportation.com, anything you need to know about us.
And maybe you too can find a fancy red suit that matches the entire aesthetic. Omar, thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you all for sticking around for the very end of the Future of Freight Festival. This Fireside Chat and all of our content from these last 3 days can be found on demand on tv.freightwaves.com. You can go through and relive it in your app. You can go through and find the general information on regular freightwaves.com. Our Freight Tech 25 announcement was today. Find that up on